The only thing we have to fear is fear itself. This was one of President Franklin Roosevelt's most memorable lines, and yet, for FDR personally, it was an incomplete list because he was afraid of a couple more things as well. I'm Bob Summers, and this is a presidential story. On March 4th, 1933, Franklin D. Roosevelt was sworn in as the nation's 32nd president, with his hand placed on his family's 1686 Dutch Bible, which remains the oldest and only non-speaking Bible ever used in a presidential inauguration. When he was sworn in, the Bible was open to 1 Corinthians 13, which reads in part, "Love is patient, love is kind." In addition to his nod towards love, FDR spent a lot of time talking about fear. In that same first inauguration, his inaugural address contained the famous line,
"Let me assert my firm belief that the only thing we have to fear is fear itself, nameless, unreasoning, unjustified terror, which paralyzes needed effort to convert retreat into advance."
In Roosevelt's 1941 State of the Union address, delivered as the world was plunging into another world war, FDR introduced the four freedoms: freedom of speech and expression, freedom of worship, freedom from want, and
the fourth is freedom from fear, which translated into world terms means a worldwide reduction of armaments to such a point and in such a thorough fashion that no nation will be in a position to commit an act of physical aggression against any neighbor anywhere in the world.
These four freedoms formed a fundamental pillar of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights that was adopted in 1948 by the United Nations General Assembly. Recognizing the fear of the American public during the Great Depression and World War II, Roosevelt would use radio addresses to reassure and inform his fellow citizens. These fireside chats were very effective. The irony is, one of his fears was fire. Early on the morning of Sunday, July 20th, 1884, 2-year-old Franklin and his parents were at the home of his maternal grandparents, Warren and Catherine Delano. The Delano estate, named Algonac, was located in Newburgh, New York. Yes, an estate. The Delanos were wealthy, making their money mainly by smuggling opium into China, contributing to the First Opium War. On that Sunday morning, the family was preparing for church and a lovely summer day out. Many of the Delano children and their families were visiting, but the only Delano child still living in the house was the youngest, and arguably their most cherished, 19-year-old Laura, Franklin's aunt. At 9 o'clock, a loud commotion was heard from Laura's third-story room. Laura had been curling her hair with an iron that had to be heated over an alcohol lamp. It is unclear how, but the lamp was knocked over and the burning alcohol splashed all over the robe that she was wearing. The family heard the loud bang of Laura's door flying open, followed by her screams as she ran into the hallway. According to Laura's father, Warren's diary, "Our darling child Laura flashed down the stairway a cloud of fiery flame. She could not be stopped, but rushed through the hall to the open air." Laura's brother-in-law, Fred Hitch, grabbed a rug and chased after her. Franklin's mother, Sarah, did the same. They finally caught her outside and used the rugs to smother the fire, but she was in critical condition. They called Dr. Smith-Ellie, who arrived within 30 minutes. He quickly began to treat Laura's burns and tried to manage her pain with chloroform and morphine. For a while, everyone thought she might pull through, but by that afternoon, she slipped into a coma. She passed away at 3 a.m. on Monday. Her father wrote in his diary, 3 o'clock in the morning, the darling child dead, her last breath and her sweet spirit had taken flight. It is not known if 2-year-old Franklin witnessed the fire that took his aunt's life, but he must have heard the screams. The family was greatly affected by Laura's death, always including a picture of her when they sat for family portraits. Either his own experience or hearing the story of Laura's death may have contributed to FDR's fear of fire. He never wrote or spoke about the root cause. According to his son Elliot, FDR's polio and the resulting loss of the use of his legs amplified his fear of fire. He was afraid if there was a fire, he would not be able to escape. Roosevelt would regularly practice escaping from his Hyde Park, New York home, Springwood. These drills would have Roosevelt dropping from his bed or chair, crawling on the floor, and pulling himself up to escape the imagined fire. This fear was intense enough that he never electrified the freight elevator he used to hoist himself to the second floor. Roosevelt's fear was that in the event of a fire, the electricity would fail and cut off the only escape route from his bedroom. Springwood never suffered a large fire while FDR was alive, but 1 week before the 100th anniversary of his birth, in 1982, a fire destroyed the old wing of the building. The cause was determined to be a short in the old electrical wiring. But fire was not FDR's only fear. He also had a mild case of triskaidekaphobia, the fear of the number 13. FDR was not the only president to hate the number 13. Herbert Hoover shared his phobia. FDR would never have a dinner with only 13 people. According to FDR's personal secretary, Grace Tully, in her book about FDR, on several occasions, I received last-minute summonses to attend a lunch or dinner party because a belated default or late addition had brought the guest list to 13. His fear extended to travel plans that landed on the 13th, especially Friday the 13th. Grace Tully wrote, "Many times, FDR went to great pains to schedule a trip departure on the 12th of the month or the 14th in order to avoid starting on the unlucky day. Occasionally, this meant pulling a train out at 11:50 p.m. on the 12th or 12:10 a.m. on the 14th. Maybe it was because of these fears that he carried a lucky rabbit's foot. But it didn't seem that the number 13 had it in for Roosevelt, or maybe it was because he carried the lucky rabbit's foot for protection. At the beginning of this story, I mentioned the Bible chapter FDR selected during his swearing-in ceremony, 1 Corinthians 13, despite his fear of the number 13. There were no ill effects as he was re-elected 3 more times, serving longer than any other president, a record that will never be broken due to the ratification of the 22nd Amendment in 1951. And even in death, he avoided the 13th, especially Friday the 13th. Roosevelt passed away on Thursday, April 12, 1945. Thanks for watching.